Keir Starmer exposed. Reform UK calls him anti-British as party gains ground. If you thought British politics couldn't get more explosive, brace yourself. Reform UK has just pulled off a shocking political upset in Blackpool, claiming a previously Labour-held seat, and Sir Keir Starmer is now being labelled anti-British by none other than Ben Habib. This brutal attack comes as Starmer's leadership faces growing criticism from all sides. Labour's crumbling strongholds, controversial policy decisions, and an electorate growing increasingly frustrated are all adding fuel to the political firestorm. But before we dive into all the details, make sure to like and subscribe for more bombshell updates on the state of British politics. In a significant political shift, Reform UK has scored a crucial victory in Blackpool, showing that change is brewing in the British political landscape. Councillor Jim O'Neill of Reform UK has taken the Martin Ward seat, which had previously been a Labour stronghold, and this is just the beginning. Ben Habib, in a fiery interview on GB News, laid into Starmer, accusing him of being anti-British and saying that this victory is just the tip of the iceberg. Habib believes many more Labour seats will fall to Reform UK as voters grow increasingly disillusioned with the party's direction under Starmer's leadership. The Martin Ward seat, which Reform UK won with 38.8% of the vote, was thought to be a safe seat for Labour. But the tide has clearly turned, with Labour's vote share plummeting by 23% to a mere 28%. This was not just a minor victory, but a clear signal that voters are fed up with the status quo. Habib, seizing the moment, declared that this win was the start of something much bigger, predicting that Reform UK will take even more seats in the local elections in 2025. According to Habib, we're winning by-election seats and we're going to have a thumping set of results in the local elections next May. Jonathan Liss, a political commentator, wasn't impressed by Habib's comments and fired back during the interview. He questioned whether Habib really believed Reform UK could become the next major opposition party after the general election. Habib responded confidently, stating, "I think Reform has it within its grasp to absolutely form the next government. There are challenges, but we're ready to meet them." He pointed to Reform UK's pro-British stance, claiming that the Labour Party no longer represents British interests and accusing Starmer of aligning himself too closely with the EU. Habib even went so far as to claim that Starmer is actively trying to reverse Brexit. Habib's claims didn't stop there. He continued his tirade by accusing Starmer of wanting to hand over British sovereignty to Brussels. According to Habib, Starmer's position on Europe, particularly his support for policies that would allow young people to work and live in EU countries, is tantamount to reopening the borders. "That's freedom of movement, plain and simple," Habib fumed, "and that is handing over control of our borders to a foreign power." These comments struck a nerve with many of Reform UK's supporters, particularly those who voted for Brexit to reclaim control of the UK's borders. Liss wasn't about to let these claims go unchallenged, however. He fired back, saying that having a close relationship with Europe doesn't mean abandoning British values. "We can still be pro-British and patriotic while working with our European neighbours," Liss argued. "It's all about having a different vision for the future of this country." But despite Liss's attempt to offer a more moderate view, the divide between these two perspectives only became more apparent, mirroring the wider polarisation in British politics today. As voters continue to turn away from both Labour and the Conservatives, Reform UK is positioning itself as a viable alternative. Once seen as a fringe party, Reform UK has been gaining ground by capitalising on voter frustration with the traditional parties. Habib's fiery rhetoric taps into this sentiment, painting Starmer as a politician who is willing to sacrifice British sovereignty for political gain. One of the most telling signs of this shift is the massive surge in support for Reform UK in Blackpool's Martin by-election. Reform UK didn't just win, they won big, increasing their vote share by 29.3% compared to 2023. Labour, on the other hand, saw their vote share plummet, losing 23% of the vote. The Conservatives didn't fare much better, with their support almost halving to 21.3%. These figures highlight the depth of voter dissatisfaction with the traditional parties and the appeal of Reform UK's populist message. Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, knows that his party is on the rise. Farage has been quick to capitalise on the momentum, expanding the party's reach and setting up over 250 local branches ahead of the 2025 elections. His strategy is clear: build a solid foundation now and win over disillusioned voters who feel let down by Labour and the Conservatives. Farage's message to his supporters is simple: Reform UK is the only party that truly represents British interests. Luke Trill, from More in Common, offered his perspective on why Reform UK's rise is significant. With voter fragmentation, Tories shouldn't assume Labour unpopularity means people will come back to them. Reform is Labour's problem now too, Trill noted. His analysis points to a broader trend of voter disillusionment, with more and more people turning to Reform UK as the only party that offers a real alternative. Farage, always the opportunist, is hoping to benefit from this disaffection and turn it into a political movement that can challenge both Labour and the Conservatives. The growing success of Reform UK is causing major headaches for both Labour and the Tories, but it's particularly problematic for Starmer. The Labour leader is already facing criticism over his handling of the Chagos Islands debacle, which has led to fears that other British overseas territories, like Gibraltar and the Falklands, could be at risk. A recent poll conducted by GB News revealed that a staggering 97% of respondents do not trust Starmer to defend British sovereignty. The poll highlights the deep distrust many voters feel towards Starmer and his government, and it's this lack of trust that Reform UK is hoping to capitalise on. Immigration is another issue that has been central to Reform UK's platform. While the UK government's participation in the G7's crackdown on smuggling gangs is a step in the right direction, many voters feel that it doesn't go far enough. Reform UK has been vocal about their support for tougher immigration policies, including stricter border controls and harsher penalties for illegal immigration. Habib's comments about open borders and the risks of allowing more EU citizens into the UK are part of a broader strategy to appeal to voters who feel that immigration is one of the most pressing issues facing the country. As the political landscape continues to shift, one thing is becoming clear: Reform UK is no longer a fringe movement. The party is gaining ground, winning elections, and challenging the traditional political order. Ben Habib's attack on Keir Starmer may have been incendiary, but it reflects a growing sentiment among voters who feel that their concerns are being ignored by the major parties. For Starmer, the challenge is not just defending his policies, but also regaining the trust of voters who are increasingly looking to Reform UK as a viable alternative. The next few years will be crucial for all of Britain's political parties. For Labour, the task will be to shore up support and prevent further losses to Reform UK. For the Conservatives, it's about finding a way to win back disaffected voters. And for Reform UK, the goal is clear: continue to build momentum and position themselves as the party that represents the true interests of the British